Asia, good evening America. You're watching World DNA. I am Rahisha Sehgal.
And I'm Aditi Singh, and on the show today we will get you the latest from the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, where Hamas militants are waging fierce battles as Israel intensifies its bombing of southern Gaza.
And the UN's aid chief says that comprehensive humanitarian operation in Gaza is non-existent. Also on the show today, former US President Donald Trump attends New York civil fraud trial. The trial, which kicked off in October, is one of the several legal challenges that Trump faces as he mounts for a comeback for the White House. All that, a lot more lined up on the show today. But first, the headlines.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatens to convert Beirut and southern Lebanon into Gaza if Hezbollah opens second front in Israel-Hamas war.
US President Joe Biden dials Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to express concerns over remaining hostages, blames Hamas for humanitarian pause breakdown.
India is a strategic partner, says White House, as it urges New Delhi to hold accountable those responsible for alleged plot to assassinate the Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun.
Former US President Donald Trump returns to New York courtroom to attend his civil fraud trial. Trump's defense team questions expert witness as case approaches conclusion.
Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi condemns Israel's assault on Gaza as he meets Russian President Vladimir Putin for talks in Moscow.
The ceasefire in professional golf is over. Live Golf has pulled off a major coup by signing reigning Masters champion and world number 3 John Ram. The deal is reported to be in excess of $550 million. And the latest from the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, where the intense fighting continues as Israel offensive has escalated across Gaza.
And US President Joe Biden had a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu where they expressed concern for the remaining hostages. Biden said that it is important to protect civilians in the fighting, and he also spoke to King Abdullah of Jordan.
Well, during talks with Netanyahu, Biden reaffirmed that it was Hamas's refusal to release women civilian hostages that broke down the humanitarian pause, and that the US will continue its efforts to pursue every opportunity to free. Well, US officials earlier said that they are not close to another ceasefire deal, while Hamas officials said that chances of further hostage release is dwindling at the moment.
We're not close to inking another deal on a humanitarian pause, and nor do I have any news to break here today about the return of hostages, either ours or those of many other countries that are being held hostage. We're still trying to get as much information as we can about the hostages that are being held.
إننا نقول لعائلات المحتجزين من الصهاينة إن استمرار جيشكم في حربه العدوانية ضد أبناء شعبنا لن يعيد أبناءكم إليكم.
Now, Israel's offensive has intensified in the southern Gaza, and the fiercest fight is unfolding in Khan Yunis, which is now witnessing massive devastation. Israeli strikes are hitting residential buildings, leaving dozens trapped under the rubble.
The IDF continues close-quarter combat against Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip, including in Khan Yunis, eliminating tunnel shafts and the terrorists operating within them. Our commando forces are conducting raids in Khan Yunis and battling Hamas terrorists, with forces striking targets using precise real-time intelligence.
The Israeli army has said that they have arrested and interrogated hundreds of suspects in terrorist activities. Soon after making this announcement, a video showing hundreds of Palestinian men, 100 of them, sitting on rows on a street in northern Gaza has appeared, as you can see on your screens right now. And the men appear to be stripped in the video, with their heads bowed as Israeli troops guard them. The Israeli media says that these men include Hamas militants who had surrendered to the Israeli forces. However, reports in Arab media say that they also include journalists and that they were forced to strip and were searched before being taken to an unknown destination.
Meanwhile, the Israeli army has released another video from northern Gaza this time, and IDF says that it retrieved from the body cam of a Hamas fighter after combat in Gaza's Jabalia. The video purports to show armed Hamas fighters inside a civilian building.
In yet another video released by the Israeli military, Hamas militants can be seen firing anti-tank missiles from civilian areas in Gaza.
Israel says that the son of its former army chief, who is currently a minister in the country's war cabinet, has been killed in the Gaza fighting. And Israeli media says that 25-year-old was badly injured after a tunnel shaft exploded and later died in the hospital. Now, earlier, a guided missile attack from Lebanon killed 60-year-old farmer in northern Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Lebanon can turn into Gaza if Hezbollah starts a war.
Meanwhile, calls have been growing to demand a war crime investigation for the journalists who have been killed in Israeli strikes in Lebanon. The US has said that it is imperative that Israel's inquiry into the killing of a Reuters journalist in Lebanon comes to a conclusion soon. Take a listen.
No bounds, so I'm deeply sorry for this loss. And it is important and appropriate that it be fully and thoroughly investigated. My understanding is that Israel has initiated such an investigation, and it will be important to see that investigation come to a conclusion and to see the results of the investigation.
And in another update indicating fallout of the war across the world, employees at a cafe in Oakland, California were filmed denying a customer said to be Jewish from using bathroom at the shop. And in another incident of anti-Semitism.
As always, yeah, great, we love it.
Not only that, while University of Pennsylvania alum is threatening to withdraw a $100 million donation to the university's business school in protest of its president's response to reported anti-Semitism on campus. We're still on with the continuous coverage of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. And Israel and Hezbollah have traded fire amid Tel Aviv's war against the Hamas militants.
Increasing artillery exchanges have heightened fears of a new front opening in the war, and the Israeli Prime Minister issued a strong warning on Thursday.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu said that Beirut would be left devastated like Gaza if Lebanon-based Hezbollah started a war. Netanyahu and his defense minister Yoav Gallant, accompanied with Chief of General Staff Herzi Halevi, were briefed at the Army's Northern Command, where he met the staff officers and other soldiers.
כי אם חיזבאללה יבחר לפתוח במלחמה כוללת, אז הוא במו ידיו יהפוך את ביירות ואת דרום לבנון, לא רחוק מכאן, לעזה ולח'אן יונס.
Meanwhile, Antony Blinken welcomed an Israeli probe into a strike that killed a journalist and wounded 6 others on October 13th in southern Lebanon. And here's what the top U.S. diplomat said at a press meet alongside his British counterpart, David Cameron.
And it is important and appropriate that it be fully and thoroughly investigated. My understanding is that Israel has initiated such an investigation, and it will be important to see that investigation come to a conclusion and to see the results of the investigation.
Well, founded in the chaos of the 15-year Lebanese civil war, the Iran-backed group is driven by its opposition to Israel and its resistance to Western influence in West Asia.
And so far, Israel and Hezbollah have stopped short of reviving the full-scale war they fought in 2006. A repeat of 2006 scenario will force Israel's military to fight on two fronts, stretching its forces thin.
Well, Hamas and other Palestinian groups in the Gaza Strip have a variety of homemade or smuggled rockets at their disposal to use against Israel. A bigger threat is being posed by Hezbollah's Iranian-supplied arsenal of rockets, drones and missiles. Hezbollah can rain fire on targets throughout Israel, including with far more advanced and hard-hitting weaponry than what Hamas has been able to muster. As per the War Zone portal, the sheer scale of Hezbollah's rocket armory is hard to conceptualize. Well, in 2016, the estimates put its arsenal at around 150,000 rockets, a tenfold increase over the roughly 15,000 that was said to be available ahead of the 2006 Lebanon war. And that number has since grown even larger. Hezbollah also possesses short-range ballistic missiles, drones and anti-ship missiles.
And in other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted his Iranian counterpart Ibrahim Raisi in Moscow.
And the meet comes on the backdrop of Putin's visits to UAE and Saudi Arabia. This as he continues to make efforts in his West Asia power play, while also raising Moscow's profile as a power broker in the region.
Putin has cast the Israel-Hamas war as a failure of U.S. diplomacy and suggested Moscow could be a mediator due to its friendly ties with both Israel and the Palestinians. He also stressed on the need to discuss the ongoing war in West Asia, especially in the Palestinian territories.
Для нас очень важно обменяться мнениями по ситуации в регионе, особенно то, что касается ситуации в Палестине.
Meanwhile, the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi emphasized the need to quickly stop the Israeli bombing of the Gaza Strip, declaring that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide and a crime against humanity. Take a listen.
داره بشریت رو رنج میده. اون یک جانبه گرایی است و نظام ناعادلانه جهانی است که جلوه این یک جانبه گرایی و نظام ناعادلانه رو میتونید امروز در غزه و در فلسطین ببینید. سرزمینی که در هر 10 دقیقه داره یک کودک کشته میشه.
The statement made by the Iranian president comes as Iran has warned repeatedly that the war between Israel and Hamas could spread to other parts of the region.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of an event he was attending in Moscow on Thursday.
The Russian president said that Prime Minister Modi cannot be, and I quote, intimidated or forced to take decisions that are contrary to national interests.
While Putin spoke rather favorably of Prime Minister Modi's tough posturing and stance when it comes to defending India's national interests. He also underlined the bilateral ties between India and Russia. Putin said that the ties between the two nations have been developing progressively in all directions. Not only this, the Russian president also underlined that the policy pursued by Prime Minister Modi is the main guarantor of relations between the two countries.
I cannot imagine His Excellency Modi getting intimidated or being forced to take any steps or actions that would go against the national interests of India and the people of India. And there is pressure against him, I am aware of that. We never talked to him about that. I can see that. And to be honest with you, I am amazed at his strict position to defend the national interests of India. We do see that.
Now, taking on the West, Putin said that India-Russia ties are deepening despite the West's pressure because of Prime Minister Modi, and the praise comes just days after a big statement by India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. He had said that ties with Moscow have quote-unquote saved New Delhi many times.
In other global news, there is more controversy in the alleged plot to murder Khalistani terrorist Gurpantwan Singh Pannun in the US, on the backdrop of FBI Director Christopher Wray's upcoming visit to India.
Now, Washington, which sees India as a strategic partner, is now urging New Delhi to quote-unquote hold accountable those behind the murder of the Khalistani terrorist.
Look, India is a strategic partner. We're deepening that strategic partnership. They're a member of the Quad in the Pacific, and we participate with them on a range, particularly of security-related issues, and we want to see that continue unabated. That said, at the same time, we certainly recognize the seriousness of these allegations, and as I said earlier, we want it fully investigated and those responsible to be held properly accountable.
And this statement comes after the U.S. Justice Department's indictment. It pointed to a murder-for-hire plot targeting Pannun, which charged an Indian man for colluding with the government officials to plot the murder of the Khalistani terrorist.
And in response, New Delhi has expressed concern about one of its government officials being linked to the plot, from which it dissociated itself as being against government policy. And last week, New Delhi had announced its decision to formally investigate the concerns aired by the US and take necessary follow-up actions.
This is a matter.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump was back in court on Thursday for his New York civil trial on fraud allegations, once again condemning the procedure as unfair.
And the former US president and his two eldest sons are accused of inflating the value of their real estate assets to receive more favorable bank loans and insurance terms.
And during the trial, Trump has called the judge in the case, Arthur Engoron, crazy and unhinged. The front-runner for the 2024 presidential nomination denounced New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who is black, as corrupt and racist. Take a listen.
This violent crime and this Attorney General who's crazed, she's a lunatic. The Attorney General sits here because she knows that she has a judge, and no matter all the evidence, that judge is going to rule in her favor. He ruled against me before the case even started. The case hadn't started. He knew nothing, and he ruled against me.
Trump, who testified on November 6th and is expected to again take the witness stand on December 11th, was in court as a spectator on Thursday. And inside, he flipped through papers while his legal team questioned a witness on the stand. Accountancy professor Eli Bartov gave evidence to support Trump's case that he had not inflated his worth. Bartov said that James's complaint had no merit because accounting is rule-based and some of the allegations border on the absurd. Now, he argued that the balance sheet rules meant that Trump's true value was understated because intangible assets were not included. And Trump was joined in court by his son Eric, who is also a defendant in the trial. The former president said on social media that Eric would not testify again as he had already testified perfectly.
This is weaponization of justice. This is something that nobody's ever seen to this extent. It's called election interference. It's a sad day for our country that a thing like this can take place. I'm sitting in a courthouse instead of being in Iowa, where I should be, even though I'm leading by about 40 points.
And the former president will stand trial on March 4th in Washington in a federal case. He's accused of seeking to upend results of the 2020 election in a concerted effort that led to the violent January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters.
Trump also faces federal charges for allegedly mishandling top-secret documents after he left the White House. He has been charged with racketeering in Georgia on accusations that he tried to overturn the 2020 election results in southern state.
And as the trial nears its end, our correspondent Susan Tarani tells us more about former U.S. President Donald Trump's returns to New York courtroom to attend a civil fraud trial. Let's take a listen.
During the past several weeks, the Trump team has called on bankers and others who had done business with the Trump organization to testify that there was no wrongdoing. And as the case is winding down now, the defense says that it will wrap up next week. The former president was in the courtroom on Thursday. He did not testify. However, he is expected to testify next Monday. As the Republican frontrunner for 2024, the former president, speaking to cameras, said that he should be in Iowa campaigning instead of a courtroom. However, this may be the situation for the former president moving forward with all the cases that he has to deal with as we get closer to the 2024 presidential elections. Now, the Trump team did get some good news on Thursday while they were in court. It was reported that an appeals court had said that they could continue doing business in New York, meaning the Trump organization, as long as this investigation by Letitia James is going on. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Well, in other global news, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that suggestions that he wanted to allow the COVID-19 virus to let rip were completely wrong.
And he also refuted the portrayal of partying in Downing Street during the second day of public questioning and called it quote-unquote absurd.
And this comes as the former Prime Minister was forced from office last year after public anger erupted over COVID-19 lockdown breaching parties called the Partygate scandals. Well, the former Prime Minister insisted that the public's perception on the Partygate scandal was, and I'm quoting him here, a million miles from the reality of what actually happened. He claimed that hundreds of civil servants were working hard and followed the rules. Take a listen.
What can I do but again apologise for mistakes that we made in number 10? What I'm trying to tell you and to tell the inquiry is that I think that the characterisation, the representation there has been of what civil servants and advisors were doing in number 10 has been a travesty of the truth. They thought they were working very, very hard, which they were.
Now, the inquiry has heard evidence from advisors that fearing the impact of the pandemic on the economy, Boris Johnson did not allow for another lockdown, and this in turn caused for the virus to spread uncontrollably. The former leader also faces barrage of criticism over the lack of scientific understanding of the COVID-19 pandemic, and he apologized for the way his government handled the virus, saying that they vastly underestimated the risks involved. Take a look.
I think the answer to that is that given what I knew at the time about what was going on, the answer to that is no. But what I possibly should have done is issued a general instruction to everybody to be mindful of the rules and how things would appear.
Meanwhile, ahead of the second day's hearing in London, families who lost their loved ones to the pandemic took to the streets in protest. People call the evidence in the official inquiry frustrating and disrespectful.
During COVID, the United Kingdom faced its biggest health crisis in decades. Remember, the country saw one of Europe's longest and strictest lockdown, as well as one of the highest death tolls across the continent. And as per data, coronavirus killed more than 200,000 people in Britain and infected many millions of others.
And now it's time for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, we will bring you the biggest updates from around the globe. Stay tuned.
Well, Italy has officially left China's Belt and Road Initiative as Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni stressed that the withdrawal happened because the agreement did not yield expected results. We will get you more on this on the other side of this short break.
The reigning Masters champion and world number 3, Jon Rahm, has confirmed that his switch to live golf, and this and more right after a short break on World DNA. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came?
Here I am.
Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the...
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Saigal and Aditi Singh. And here on the show, we're just talking about how former US President Donald Trump was back in the courtroom on Thursday for his New York civil trial on fraud allegations. We will be tracking that story very closely on World DNA right now.
This and a lot more, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. US President Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden, indicted on 9 tax-related charges, including 3 felony counts, revealed documents filed in Los Angeles court.
Russian President Vladimir Putin praises India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, says Modi takes a tough stance in protecting interests of Indians, adds Prime Minister Modi's policy guarantees deep relations between New Delhi and Moscow.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatens to convert Beirut and southern Lebanon into Gaza if Hezbollah opens second front in Israel-Hamas war.
US President Joe Biden dials Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to express concern over remaining hostages, blames Hamas for humanitarian pause breakdown.
India is a strategic partner, says White House, as it urges New Delhi to hold accountable those responsible for alleged plot to assassinate the Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun.
And the ceasefire in professional golf is over. Live Golf has pulled off a major coup by signing reigning Masters champion and world number 3 John Ram. The deal is reported to be in excess of $550 million. And Italy has officially left China's Belt and Road Initiative, and the country's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni stressed that the withdrawal happened because the agreement did not yield expected results. Take a listen.
Conte ci dovrebbe spiegare la ragione per la quale noi siamo l'unica nazione che ha aderito alla via della sede, ma non siamo la nazione che ha gli interscambi maggiori con la Cina, anche nelle economie europee, no? Per cui io penso che banalmente si possano e si debbano mantenere rapporti di assoluta, anzi migliorare rapporti di cooperazione con la Cina, commerciale, economica, ma che lo strumento della via della seta da questo punto di vista non abbia dato i risultati che erano.
China has slammed Italy's move of leaving the Belt and Road Initiative. It called the move smearing of its Belt and Road infrastructure project after Italy said that it would withdraw more than 4 years after it became the only G7 nation to sign up.
Well, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said, and I'm quoting him here, China firmly opposes smearing and undermining of cooperation on the joint construction of the Belt and Road and opposes confrontation and division among camps that causes separation, unquote.
Now, the Italians are moving away from Xi Jinping's pet project, the flagship Belt and Road Initiative. Italy had earlier confirmed that it will pull out of China's flagship Belt and Road Initiative. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's administration notified Beijing that it would cease participating in the BRI, and this comes ahead of Italy's membership's deadline at the year end.
Well, Italy was the only major Western nation to sign up to the BRI. The move was heavily criticized by the US and others at that time.
But what is the BRI? Launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2013, the BRI aims to invest nearly $1 trillion across Asia and Europe, and projects include new and upgraded railways and ports to connect China with Europe and other parts of Asia.
Well, but the BRI has been criticized from the start for furthering Beijing's debt trap diplomacy. Well, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni called the former government's decision to join a serious mistake.
And in some more news coming from China, President Xi Jinping will visit neighboring Vietnam next week to push for deeper ties between the socialist neighbors. And according to officials, the visit is from December 12th to 13th.
Well, Xi's state visit is expected to promote partnership between China and Vietnam. According to the officials, the two countries will focus on areas of political security, multilateral and maritime issues. While China is Vietnam's largest trading partner and an important source of imports for its manufacturing sector.
中越是社会主义邻邦。去年底，中共20大后，习近平总书记、国家主席邀请越共中央总书记阮富中来访，共同为中越全面战略合作伙伴关系发展擘画蓝图。今年以来，双方高层频繁互动，各部门各地方交往密切，各领域合作持续深化，为两国人民带来了切实利益。当前世界处于新的动荡变革期。
Well, in other global news, Afghanistan and Pakistan are at loggerheads. Well, this is because Islamabad wants to deport all illegal Afghan refugees in its territory by January 2024.
And Pakistan says that over 400,000 Afghans have left the country so far, but there is one man in Kabul for whom Islamabad has always been bending backwards to accommodate.
Well, the man here we're talking about is Sirajuddin Haqqani, the interior minister in the Taliban government, a designated global terrorist. The US has put a reward of up to $10 million for information leading directly to his arrest. And for a long time, this partly covered face was the only picture of him available that you can see on your screens right now.
And time and again, showing only one side of his face, Haqqani remained an elusive figure, influential and reserved. He has stayed away from public appearances, and at times only his blurred images were available to the media. And even after the Taliban took charge in Afghanistan and named Sirajuddin Haqqani as one of its top ministers, he has been shrouded in a veil of secrecy. Now remember, Sirajuddin Haqqani is the head of the dreaded Haqqani network.
It was only in March last year that Haqqani was pictured at a graduation ceremony of the police officers in Kabul. In all this while, Haqqani has been using passports issued to him by Pakistan. Haqqani was issued a Pakistani passport for 5 long years, and this he used for his foreign travels. His passports were issued from Pakistani offices in Balochistan, Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Now, subsequent inquiries confirmed that Haqqani had a passport issued to him from in Peshawar during the tenure of the Imran Khan-led PTI government. Remember, the Imran Khan government opened its arms to the new rulers of Afghanistan after the hasty departure of Americans.
Haqqani used the Pakistani passport to travel abroad, like I mentioned earlier, particularly to Qatar for negotiations with the US for the signing of the Doha Agreement. The Doha Agreement paved the way for the pullout of US forces from Afghanistan.
And now, after Pakistani journalists raised the issue, it is reported that Islamabad has hastily cancelled the Taliban minister's passport. But the question over Pakistan's duplicity still remains, given that it favoured the man that the US accuses of masterminding many terror attacks with its passport.
And the UAE ambassador to India, Abdul Nasir Al-Shali, has conveyed his optimism about the ongoing COP28 climate summit in Dubai.
And in conversation with WION's diplomatic correspondent Siddharth Simbul, Ali Shali spoke about the ongoing mega climate meet that has seen several declarations so far. Listen in to some excerpts.
UAE is the center of the world in many ways, but with the country hosting the COP summit, there's a lot of focus on the prosperous West Asian country. With me is UAE's ambassador to New Delhi to talk about this mega summit. We're halfway through. There's a lot of things which are expected as well. But if you can talk about the key priorities and key developments which have happened so far.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Let me tell you about what has been achieved so far. As you have seen, we have made the loss and damage fund operational with more than $700 million. $100 million from those coming from the UAE alone. There have been a few declarations with quite a few signatories. So the agriculture and food one has more than 130 countries who signed on to it. The climate health one has more than 120 countries who have signed on to it. We have 50 companies who have signed on the oil and gas decarbonization charter. India has supported us and signed on the climate finance charter with 13 countries so far.
Let's shift focus to some news from the world of business. After 6 months of decline, China's exports grew in number, and this did not offer the full picture. Rising exports show that factories are offering discounts to beat falling demand.
Exports grew 0.5% in November compared to a 6.4% fall in October. Meanwhile, imports fell 0.6% in November, and that's a massive swing from a 3.0% jump in the month of October.
Mixed data for November has ignited calls for more policy support to the economy, and in short run, however, the pressure on manufacturers show little sign of easing off completely. China's official purchasing managers index showed new export orders that shrank for the 9th month in a row. And not just that, a private sector survey showed factory owners failing to attract overseas buyers. Now, the ongoing policy support measures have helped a little, but concerns about weak domestic demand, unemployment and household confidence threaten a full recovery.
And now news from Russia. Its monthly income from oil exports is booming. It's now greater than it was before the Ukraine-Russia war.
And a Bloomberg report indicates that the price cap on Russian oil has effectively failed, and the West had imposed a $60 per barrel cap on Russian oil as part of the sanctions. But this has paradoxically profited dozens of shipping companies that are difficult to track. Over 45% of Russian oil was transported with the help of these quote-unquote shadow fleet. Russia's net income from oil stood at $11.3 billion in October, and this was the highest monthly income from oil exports since the war last year. And that's not all. Ships from Greece transported more Russian oil than any other country in 2023, and they accounted for a quarter of all oil shipments from Russia this year.
And let's now shift our focus to the world of technology and see some big news from that sector. Well, Meta's independent oversight board has announced it will review how Meta has handled violent content related to the Israel-Hamas war on its social media platforms. 2 posts involving hostage-taking and bombing in the Israel-Hamas war on Instagram and Facebook are under an expedited review by the review board.
And this review marks the first time the Meta Oversight Board is conducting a review on an expedited basis, which means a decision will be published within 30 days. And the decision comes after Meta and other tech platforms have been scrutinized over their handling of content about the conflict. The Oversight Board comprises a panel of global academics, experts and civic leaders and is run independently of Meta.
Well, in response to the escalating threat posed by cybercrime in India, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has blocked more than 100 websites. Now, these websites were linked to organized illegal investments and fraudulent part-time job offers. The blocked websites were operated by individuals from abroad who used digital ads, ad chats, messengers, and rented accounts to conduct their activities on major platforms of Google and Meta.
Now, the main targets of these fraudulent schemes included retirees, women and unemployed youth. The money made from these economic crimes was being laundered out of India through card networks, cryptocurrencies, overseas ATM withdrawals and international fintech companies. The Indian ministry has emphasized citizen participation in the reporting of such fraudulent phone numbers and social media handles to the National Cyber Reporting Portal, cybercrime.government.in.
Well, teenagers who use smartphones for more than 4 hours daily could have a higher chance of poor mental health and substance use risk. And a study conducted by Hanyang University Medical Center analyzed data of more than 50,000 teenagers. The data included the approximate number of daily hours each participant spent on a smartphone. The study found that teenagers who use a smartphone for more than 4 hours per day had higher rates of stress, thoughts of suicide and substance use than those with usage below 4 hours per day.
However, adolescents who used a smartphone 1 to 2 hours per day faced fewer problems than adolescents who did not use a smartphone at all.
And on to the world of sports now. Reigning Masters champion and world number 3, Jon Rahm has confirmed his switch to LIV Golf.
The two-time major winner's departure from the PGA Tour is a massive coup for the Saudi Arabia-funded league and could reignite the civil war in the sport that has been on hold since June. Now, Rahm is in the running to be named PGA Tour Player of the Year and is one of the professional golf's biggest stars at the moment. Official figures aren't available at the moment, but the deal is reported to be in excess of $550 million, which makes it the largest contract ever signed by a sportsperson.
Rahm had 4 wins on the PGA Tour in the 2022 and 2023 season and a total of 10 top 10 finishes. His win at the Masters in April made him the first European to win both the US Open and the Green Jacket.
I believe in the growth of the game of golf. I've largely spoken about how Seve improved the game of golf in Spain, and I've always said how I would like to do the same thing over there. And if I can reach a bigger audience, it would be amazing. And I do believe this process will help me do that.
Now, speculation about Rahm joining LIV had intensified during the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas last week. Rahm had previously distanced himself from LIV but never slammed the league and had continuously maintained good relations with players who jumped ship. Rahm becomes LIV's biggest name on the roster that already includes Phil Mickelson, Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Cameron Smith. Now, 3 of the last 5 major winners are now LIV players. Rahm's world ranking will drop due to his move to LIV, but he's guaranteed to play all 4 majors till 2027.
However, his switch will hurt the European Ryder Cup team with his participation in the 2025 edition in New York now.
Even though it's not part of this sport, it is now, though. It was the team aspect of things.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the biggest sporting events, for the most part, people are following their teams. And I myself, growing up being a massive Athletic Bilbao fan, I realized that, you know, that has a bit of an appeal, right? Much more than I gave it credit to even in golf.
Now, Rahm's move comes ahead of a crucial December 31st deadline. LIV Golf and the PGA Tour signed a framework agreement in June to pause golf's civil war. That deal was signed without the knowledge of the players and led to a near revolt within the tour against the management. 15-time major winner Tiger Woods calls the shots now and indicated last week that the interest of the players would be paramount going forward. Rahm's addition to the LIV roster is a shot across the bows and could hand LIV leverage in talks with no player immune to the unlimited wealth at the public investment fund's disposal.
Let's take a look at what's making news in the world of sports. Well, according to reports in Italy, Italy's sports prosecutors have requested a 4-year ban on Juventus midfielder Paul Pogba over doping allegations. Pogba was suspended in September after tests by Italy's National Anti-Doping Organization detected testosterone, a hormone that increases athletes' endurance, after Juventus's 3-0 Serie A season opening victory on Wednesday and his positive doping test was confirmed in a counter-analysis on a second sample in October.
U.S. private equity group Arctos Partners have acquired a minority common equity stake in French champions Paris Saint-Germain. The club, in a statement, said that the investment will go towards growing the club's operations and supporting their real estate initiatives, including the stadium and training centre. Financial details were not disclosed, but the Financial Times reported that Arctos would buy a 12.5% stake, which values PSG at $4.32 billion. Now, Qatar Sports Investments, who bought PSG in 2011, will continue to have full control of the club and its decision-making.
Australia's Steve Smith is not going to retire from Test cricket, according to his manager, Warren Craig. There was speculation surrounding Smith's future in the 5-day format after fellow batter David Warner expressed his desire for a Sydney farewell at the third and